And if we can understand the events of the story within the context of this medical analogy, right, of what existentialism diagnoses, the treatment that it provides, and the state of health that you would achieve if you followed this treatment, then the events of the story can be organized and interpreted, right? That have meaning and to make sense, right? They're just not random. Okay? So far, we've seen that there are examples of loss, right? And we've seen examples of Meursault living in the moment, right? So we've got the first two parts of this analogy, right? But now we need to get to this third part, the state of health, right? This is a bit more challenging, but I believe it's there. So let's see if we can come up with examples. So I think one way of thinking about the treatment is to think of it in terms of, is Meursault like Boxer, for example? Does Meursault stay the same throughout the novel, or does he change? Is Meursault like Boxer? Boxer stays the same throughout all of Animal Farm, right? He's consistent in his beliefs that Napoleon is always right and that he should work harder. Does that ever change? Who changes? Meursault? And the stranger? Okay, so how does he change? He didn't miss Maria that much. Okay, all right. So let's think about this, right? How does Meursault define freedom when he first gets to jail, or before he was in jail? How do you think he knew that he was free? Well, you just said it. Being with Marie, right? Being with Marie was one of these things that made him know beyond doubt that he was free, right? All right. What's another thing that he did, which gave him a sense of freedom? Smoking cigarettes, right? All right, so being with Marie, smoking cigarettes. What's another thing that he did before he went to jail that gave him a sense of his own freedom? What else would he do besides being with Marie, smoking, and what else? Well, how did he meet Marie? Where was he at when he met Marie?
At the beach somewhere.
Yeah, he likes to go to the beach, right? So going to the beach. So, being with Marie, smoking, and going to the beach are three ways in which Meursault sort of exercises his freedom, right? When he's doing these things, he feels most free, right? And being with Marie, and smoking cigarettes, and going to the beach. These make him aware of his freedom. Now, he experiences bad luck, right? He's at the wrong place at the wrong time, and he's got a gun, and he shoots the Arab, right? So, he's put in jail. What happens to his idea of freedom? Okay, it changes, but how does this this is his old idea of freedom, right? This is his old idea of freedom. How does having these things taken away from him make him feel? They make him feel unfree, right? In other words, his idea of freedom is used against him to make him feel unfree, right? All of these things are taken away from him, right? The way he wants to find his freedom is used against him to make him feel unfree. Would you agree with that? Why?
Because he used to do those things, but when he was in jail, he's not allowed to do those things.
He's not allowed to do those things, and that's the punishment, right? Not being able to do the things you once did when you were free, that's your punishment, right? So his idea of freedom, let's say his old idea of freedom, is used against him to make him feel unfree, less free, trapped, right? Would you agree with that? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay, so let's say you like going to the park on Sunday, right? Every Sunday you look forward to going to the park, right? All of a sudden you do something bad and now you're no longer able to go to the park. How do you feel? You feel good about that? I can use that against you because I know you like going to the park, right? I can use that as a form of punishment. I can say, well, you can't go to the park anymore until you make a 10 on your exam or until you make an A on your exam, right? So now I can use your old definition of freedom against you to make you feel less free, to be a punishment, right? Now, you said that Meursault adapted. How does he adapt? Tell me what you mean by Meursault adapts.
He changed his circumstances.
Does he change his circumstance? Can he change the fact that he's in jail?
No, I mean like.
Uh-huh. What does he change? This is his old idea of freedom. Does he develop a new idea of freedom?
Yes.
Okay. So, what is his new idea of freedom? Well, we can say what it's not, right? Does his new idea of freedom include being with Marie?
No.
No. All right, so there's no Marie in his new idea of freedom. Is there smoking cigarettes in his new idea of freedom? No. Does he need cigarettes anymore? When the guards offer him, hey, you want some cigarettes? You know, do you want to smoke up before we have to go back to the trial? What does he say? Does he say, sure, give me a pack of cigarettes? He turns them down, right? So his new definition of freedom does not include Marie, and it does not include cigarettes. All right. Now, so these are the things that his new definition of freedom does not include. Now, let's get to this last part, the thing that I call eternal return. In other words, he embraces his life. He accepts his life. Is there an example? Is there an example of Meursault embracing the life that he has? The life of being a prisoner? With the inevitable end of him, of his execution? Does he embrace that? Does he accept that? Okay. Can you tell me where?
Like you think that everyone will die sometimes, but that day for him will come soon.
Yeah, we all have to die. For some people, it's just sooner rather than later, right? But are any of us going to escape death?
No.
No. So that's part of his acceptance. And I think there's a sort of stronger expression of his acceptance of his life as he has it. And I'll give you the example. Turn to page 119. Turn to page 119. All right, so it's the last paragraph on page 119. Remember at the end, the priest comes and visits Meursault. The priest is sort of trying to spiritually seduce Meursault into, this accepting Christianity, right? And Meursault refuses, right? So the priest, he stood there with his back to me for quite a long time. His presence was grating and oppressive. I was just about to tell him to go, to leave me alone, when all of a sudden, turning toward me, he burst out, "No, I refuse to believe you. I know that at one time or another you've wished for another life." I said, "Of course I had, but it didn't mean any more than wishing to be rich, to be able to swim faster, or to have a more nicely shaped mouth. It was all the same." But he stopped me and wanted to know how I pictured this other life. Then I shouted at him, "One where I could remember this life." Now, so how is that an acceptance of the life that he has? When he says, well, sure, I wished about another life, but that is about as meaningful as wishing to be rich or wishing to swim faster or to have a better shaped mouth. Does sitting around wishing that you were richer, does that make it true? I wish I were richer. Does that make it true? Is there any point to wishing that? Is that the life I have? Is my BMW waiting for me outside? What do you think? Do you think I got a BMW out in the parking lot? No, because if I did, I wouldn't be working this job, right? Am I bitter about that? No. I like my job. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. Right? So Meursault says, well, no, the other life that I'd want is the one where I can remember this one, this life that I have, because this is the life, the only life that has meaning, right? Talking about things as they might be doesn't make sense. Why? Because that's not the life we have. The life we have is the one we have, right? So how do we know he embraces his life? Well, at the very end, he describes his mother. And the way that he describes his mother, and then the way that he sort of, he projects this attitude about the day of his execution, sort of get at this idea that he has embraced his life. In other words, he's embraced this state of health. He's redefined his freedom from this old idea of freedom to this new idea of freedom. And we're going to talk about that. And that new idea of freedom leads him to embrace his life. So, at the bottom of page 122, he states, at the bottom of page 122, next to the last page, he says, "So close to death, Maman must have felt free then, and ready to live it all again." Right? This idea of living, having to live every day of your life again and again forever. Right? So close to death, Maman must have felt free then and ready to live it all again. Nobody had the right to cry over her. Right? In other words, nobody had the right to feel bad for her because she didn't feel bad for herself. She didn't regret her life. She was willing to live it all over again. Right? Now, how do we know that Meursault has sort of made that same move that his mother made toward the end of her life? Well, let's see how he describes his expectations for the day of his execution. This is at the bottom of 122. "I open myself to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself, So like a brother, really. I felt that I had been happy, and that I was happy again. For everything to be consummated, for me to feel less alone, I had only to wish that there be a large crowd of spectators the day of my execution, and that they greet me with cries of hate. Now think about this. If you're going to be executed, and you know it's inevitable, right? And you've accepted that your day of execution, right? You embrace it. Well, don't you want a crowd of spectators there, crying for your execution? Yeah, and that's what Meursault has described. He's embraced his life, right? So he's redefined his freedom so that his freedom can't be used against him to trap him, to make him feel less free, to make him feel unfree. And instead of wishing that he had another life, because can you get another life? Right? Can Meursault get another life? He's in jail, right? Can he change his circumstances? No, but he can change his attitude about his circumstances, right?